Did you know that Charmander and Cyndaquil have the same base stat totals? They both sit at 309. Not only that, they're also the mono fire type starter Pokemon for their regions. In fact, once they evolve, Typhlosion and Charizard both have the same stat totals as well. But that's where their similarities diverge. Once they're fully evolved, Charizard actually gets a secondary typing, Flying. And that may change the game quite a bit for it. I'm going to be playing the Charmander line today, and we're going to get up to level 6 before we get to the rival, just for good measure. I replaced Cyndaquil with Charmander for this run, but I also do love Totodile. The rival has it today to try to make this run as difficult as possible. I don't know how hard his team is actually going to be, but we're going to give him the best shot he can get. Held items are allowed for these solo runs, and the berry can make a huge benefit for this first fight, and later there's actually going to be several held items that can really help Charizard for the end of the game. Another benefit for Charmander is that it learns Ember a little bit earlier than Cyndaquil. It gets this at level 7, not level 12, which is a huge benefit for the early game and for Falkner's Gym. On the way there, I'm going to stop and pick up a Bellsprout. They can be kind of tricky to find, and it took me a moment to get one, but they're great for cut and flash, so I really wanted to find it. We finally do, and we can catch it and name it Acidify. You rock! If you want to see your name pop up in these videos, make sure to get subscribed. That's how I get all the names for my HM employees here. And Acidify was a great fit for Bellsprout. Speaking of Bellsprout, we can go clear Sprout Tower. Now, it's odd to me that this area is right next to Falkner's Gym, and it feels like you're intended to go here first. But if you are, you're going to be over-leveled for Falkner's Gym since his ace is only a level 9. Especially because at the top of Sprout Tower, there's a Sage that has a level 10 Hoothoot. So literally another Flying-type Pokemon that's higher level than the Pidgeotto in the gym. It's kind of odd, but it does mean that our Fire Lizard got to level 14 and can clear all of these trainers in Falkner's Gym with no problem. And Falkner himself really isn't that much of a challenge. Mudslap on Pidgey is a little bit annoying, but Pidgeotto's never going to use it, so Charmander doesn't really have a problem here. Outside of some really unlucky losses, it's kind of a guaranteed win. After the gym, we heal up and we head out onto Route 32, and then I realized I should backtrack and get that Paralyzed Cure Berry. In previous runs, I've used this berry to get past Claire later because she can cause paralysis on several of her Pokemon. It could even be useful against Lance later. In Union Cave, I can also pick up Swift, which is a great bonus to Charmander's Learn Set. It's not the hardest hitting move in the world, but it is a nice upgrade from scratch, so I'll take it for now. I taught Mudslap as well, but because Charmander already has access to Smokescreen, this isn't as big of an improvement as Swift was to scratch. It does deal damage, but not very much. Once I get to Azalea, I can clear Slowpoke well, and in the middle of this, I can actually reach level 16, which means Charmander can evolve into Charmeleon. This is the first evolution today, and while it brings some improvements to the base stats, the Learn Set actually doesn't change very much at all. Charmeleon, though, has no problem with the rest of the rockets in Slowpoke well, and we can get ready for Bugsy in Azalea. With the Fire-type, Charmeleon really is set up for success here. Ember is going to do great damage against both of the Cocoon Pokemon, and with these Chrysalises, or Crystali, out of the way, we can take on Scyther, and its Fury Cutter is actually not very effective, meaning it just doesn't have a lot of damage it can output against us. Because of this, Charmeleon can just tank a couple of hits while hitting Ember with massive damage and take it out pretty easily. I am a little bit worried because the next fight is against Silver, here leaving Azalea Town, and his Croconaw might actually be a problem. Sometimes in this fight I have to rely on Mudslap for damage against Ghastly because many other Pokemon don't have a special move at this point. However, today Ember makes Ghastly a piece of cake, or I guess a combusted smoke cloud. I used Mudslap a couple of times on Croconaw just to make sure it doesn't get any water guns, or at least too many of them. Once it goes down though, Silver only has a Zubat and it really poses no threat. After that, I can head to the forest, pick up Cut, and that also means I can go get a Charcoal from Azalea. I backtrack for this because the 10% boost to fire moves is going to be really nice, especially when I can learn Fire Punch and Flamethrower later on. It doesn't stop there because we can also pick up Headbutt here in the forest. This isn't that much better than Swift, but it does still have 100% accuracy and a little bit better damage than Swift, and it probably will last longer on the moveset. Charizard might not keep this forever though. I can pick up 2 Ethers here in the forest as well in Crystal version before heading off to Goldenrod City. Here in Goldenrod, I'm going to go pick up a couple of items from the underground and then head over to the department store. Here, I'm going to buy Fire Punch, and this is actually a really useful and kind of needed upgrade to Charmeleon's Learn Set. In Gen 1, Fire types are kind of missing a mid-power Fire type move. Most of them, like Charizard, have to use Ember for way too long and then just wait for Flamethrower or Fire Blast. From there, I'm off to Whitney, and this is actually going to be a little bit better for Charmeleon than it would have been for Charizard. Whitney's Miltank is famous for being able to use Rollout, and this move would deal 4 times damage to Charizard, so Charmeleon's getting off a little bit easier today, and with the added Fire Punch, we actually can get through it without too much issue. If we hadn't had this move, I don't know how long it would have taken us to beat her though. From there, I go to the game corner where I can get Abra. Its teleport is going to be very useful, and we're going to name this Faded. Thank you so much, Faded, for being subscribed. You're awesome. After that, we head up north, and I can find Sudowoodo here. Being a pretty peaceful guy, I'm going to go ahead and let Sudowoodo be free. Run off into the forest, little guy. It's now time for 2 more important locations for the game. Charmeleon makes quick work of the Kimono Girls because of Headbutt and the evolution's low base defense across the board. That means we can pick up Surf, and we head to the Burn Tower. Here, Silver is waiting for us once again. With the addition of Fire Punch on our moveset, he really doesn't pose much of a threat. Haunter goes down in 2 hits and actually doesn't use Curse, which is really good. Headbutt also will deal more damage against Croconaw. So while it takes some damage, it's actually not too close at all. Zubat and Magnemite after that are just no problem at all because Fire Punch does so much damage, and we take an easy win. From there, with bolstered confidence in Charmeleon, I head to Morty. I'm at a decent level and Fire Punch is giving me really reliable damage, plus I have Mud Slap in case I need to drop accuracy, and Charmeleon puts in an excellent performance here as well. It actually has 0 resets so far in the game for almost 30 minutes in, and I now make my way toward Olivine City. Here I run into Silver again, who spooks me a little and then he runs along out of the way. Wonder where he's off to. I then can pick up the Good Rod and catch a Krabby. Krabby is probably one of the best HM Pokemon in the game. Super reliable little guy. I named this Tanner. Thank you so much, Tanner, for being subscribed. You rock. That is our last subscriber for today, but I can go talk to Jasmine, who tells me I need to go to Cyanwood City to go pick up that potion for her, and that means it's time to fight Chuck. I am a little bit worried about Chuck because of his Poliwrath. It could do some good damage with Surf, I think. I could train up a few more levels to become a Charizard and get the flying type. This would let me resist fighting type moves and give me better stat totals in general. I didn't think it was really necessary because, Dynamic Punch is not that good, right? But in these first few fights in the gym, I actually get frozen by the Hitmonchan. This feels real bad. I do know in Generation 2 that there's roughly a 10% chance to thaw out, so I just stuck it out in this fight to try and get out of it. That's Charmeleon's first reset, and the run was going so well. After that, though, it has no problem coming back and beating all of them anyway, and it can make its way to Chuck. The Primeape seems to just like to use Leer, which works for me, because I don't think it's going to be a problem. Except when I get to the Poliwrath, it actually can hit a Dynamic Punch because of Mind Reader, and with the Leer, it actually does a lot of damage. It takes me out and I go back in. I feel like Charmeleon could take this, but it seems like it's struggling a little more than I expected. On a 3rd attempt, we can finally knock him out and we can go get Fly, and realize that I didn't have Kenya and have to surf back to fight Jasmine. But now at level 34, Charmeleon has access to Flamethrower, and that means that her Steel-type Pokemon just melt right in front of me. Steelix just doesn't have the special defense for this, especially for Flamethrower. I can head up to the Lake of Rage, pick up a few important items up here by the hut, and fight this guy on the way out just so I can get to level 36. And that means that Charmeleon is finally evolving into Charizard. And with that evolution, we get the first major changes to the Learn set. Not only does Lizard pick up Wing Attack now, I actually have access to Dragon Rage, which I guess could maybe help. But the real interesting additions are Steel Wing and Dragon Breath. Oh, and Fly, I guess. It's going to be really useful to get around. After Charizard knocks out that iconic red Gyarados, I have to head back to Mahogany and start the Rocket plotline. Here we join Lance for this Rocket hideout underneath the little shop, which Charizard obviously has no problem with at all. We can get all the way to the end of this and fight the executives. Being this over-leveled and having access to Flamethrower, Headbutt, and Fly means Charizard is putting forward a dominant performance. After we pick up HM6 from Lance, we can head out and go to the gym. This means that we can fight Price. And in Generation 1, I would have been a little bit more worried about this. In those games, Fire didn't actually resist Ice, meaning these Ice moves would have been super effective. Today though, they're really no problem, and his Pokemon are just not that good. And Piloswine takes super effective damage from Flamethrower, so it's just kind of a shutout. But beating Price means we gotta get back to the Rocket plotline, and we can fight the rival in the underground. I would be more worried about this fight, except the fact that Fraligator's best water move is still only Water Gun. It's a little disappointing, but because there's still no physical special split, it's not hitting as hard as it could be with those water moves anyway. That change really helped Fraligator in the future. After beating the rival, we can head over and fight the final Rocket Executive, who's really no problem at all. It is a nice chance to see Houndour and Houndoom though, they just really didn't get enough screen time in these games. Now with 7 badges down, we only have 1 more to go, and that means I have to make my way through the Ice Path to get to Blackthorn City. Here there are a couple of really important items, like HM7, which I feel like is way too easy to miss in these games, as well as the TM for Rest, some vitamins, and a PP up, all super useful for later. When I complete the Ice Path, I can get to Blackthorn City, and that means it's time for the Dragon Gym. This isn't too bad for Charizard, and it's probably grateful that it's not a Dragon type for this fight. Fly does great damage because of Charizard's great base stats and stab. This means I only take 1 hit from Kingdra, which is not too bad, and Fly can take it out on the second hit. which means we've completed the gym challenge and we have to go answer some questions and talk to Claire, and then we can finally get our 8th badge. Getting this badge also gets us access to Dragon Breath, which I will teach to Charizard because it's actually going to be very useful for Lance. And in all honesty, at this point, Mud Slap isn't really helping that much. With a few more quick stops, like to pick up a rare candy and a PP up and another rare candy, and the soft sand for later because Charizard can actually learn Earthquake, which is really nice. I can make my way toward Kanto, surf across the water, and get to Victory Road. Here, the rival's going to stop us and fight us one more time. In all honesty, his team doesn't feel ready for the league. I don't know what he's doing with level 30 Pokemon coming over here. He's got to train a little bit more, especially since Feraligatr still only has Water Gun. I don't know what's up with that. It doesn't even learn Surf or anything. A very odd learn set, but after that, our Fire Lizard can just wipe the rest of his team. Now with only 4 resets, most of them against Chuck, unfortunately, Charizard can make its way to the Elite Four, and it's actually doing very well. And with Earthquake added to its moveset, it now has Flamethrower, Earthquake, Fly, and Dragon Breath, which seems like a really solid set for the league. And of course, the League Challenge in Johto starts off with Will, who's actually not that much of a problem. His Zatus can go down with 1 Flamethrower, and his Slowbro is missing one critical thing, a Water move. For whatever reason, it has Curse and Body Slam instead of Surf. I mean, it does have Psychic, but it's not really a problem for Lizard today. And after we take out Slowbro, he has a lot of Pokemon that are weak to Fire-type moves, like Exeggutor and Jinx. So Will's really struggling today against Charizard. Once we beat him, we can move on to Koga, and Koga has a similar problem actually. They changed Koga's team quite a bit when he was admitted to the Elite Four, but that does mean that he has a lot of bug Pokemon added to his team. I guess that makes sense because a lot of bugs also have the poison typing, but it does mean Flamethrower is really good. I also have Earthquake as backup, but I kind of forget to use it against Muck. It doesn't really matter that much because Charizard is just wiping the floor with Flamethrower. Once Koga's team is all burned up, we can head to the next challenge, which is Bruno. I think it's pretty nice that Bruno actually gets a second chance in these games, but he's not that good, right? Well, he actually knows how to use Detect. I didn't know that he actually could use that move efficiently, but him on top can block my Fly at every turn. I switch tactics and I can knock it out, and the rest of his team takes a lot of damage from Fly. The Hitmon's actually got a big boost to their special defense in Gen 2, so Flamethrower is not actually the best answer here. I actually end up taking quite a bit of damage, and Bruno heals as Machamp. It's burned, so it can't do a ton, but it actually could have turned bad if I had missed one of these moves. Hitmonlee can't do much though, and that means that Charizard can take the win and limp away actually from Bruno. This was actually a pretty good showing from him. That does mean it's time for Karen, and she can be very intimidating in Gen 2. The combination of Umbreon and Gengar at the front of her team can be really strong. I was carrying Earthquake specifically for Gengar and for Houndoom later. It turns out that was a smart decision. Murkrow isn't actually ever that much of a problem, and Houndoom takes a ton of damage from Earthquake. That means it's only Vileplume left, and I actually do get paralyzed, which is a little annoying, but I know that Flamethrower can knock it out as soon as I can move and hit it, and it does. So that means Karen is no more, and we only have one more member of the Elite Four left. The one that actually scares me the most, it's Lance. Now, I didn't realize it at the time, but Charizard has a huge problem at Lance. The first is Gyarados is just a pain, because it doesn't go down for a single hit from anything. This is where Thunder Punch would be really useful. I have Dragon Breath, and it doesn't knock out. It barely does a little more than half. So I'm nowhere close to a one-hit knockout, and I can get paralyzed really easily in this fight. Or hit by Thunder, which happens in the next fight and does a ton of damage. And even if things go well against the first 2 Dragonites, Aerodactyl comes out, and it actually knows Rock Slide. This is an illegal Aerodactyl. Aerodactyl shouldn't know this move, but Lance's does, and it's a huge problem. I had forgotten about this and not really realized it would be a problem, but this being in the middle of the fight is actually the worst case scenario. If I take any damage going into him, or too much damage at least, I am just going to get knocked out right away. If I make it to Aerodactyl at decent health, I can actually survive a hit though, and I can take it out as long as it doesn't get a crit. And after 9 resets, I'm here at Charizard. I can use Fly. I get hit, but taken out to 1. I get a dodge again, and I can hit with Fly. But with 1 HP and 1 Dragonite left, I just don't think it's possible. But then I get a Paralyze on Dragonite, so if he can't move, I get a win. It moves, it hits Outrage, and knocks out the Fire Lizard. Charizard is heartbroken after that one, and it's going to do its best to not have that happen again. I've used all of my rare candies, and Charizard is now level 60, which means I can actually take out Gyarados if I use Dragon Breath and then Fly right after each other. I can get a Paralyze as well on Dragonite where it doesn't move, and a crit on the second one. This is some insane luck where I get the Aerodactyl at full health. I hit it with Flamethrower, and it actually gets burned. That makes it so it's a much easier fight. I don't take nearly as much damage from Rock Slide because Aerodactyl's attack is cut. Charizard comes out, but I actually have good health now, I can hit a fly. It doesn't quite do enough. I just use a second one to knock it out. And now with only one Dragonite left, I could tank pretty much anything. Outrage hits doesn't do enough, and I can use Dragon Breath to take out the last Dragonite and take the win against Lance. And I've beaten the Elite Four. And we can see our whole team here in the Hall of Fame, but that doesn't mean the game is over. Crystal version, there's still a whole nother region to go. For the most part though, Kanto is extremely easy. So for these videos, I'm going to skip to the hardest gym battle that I can find, and today that's Misty. Fly from Charizard is actually not doing a ton of damage against some of the members of her team. Her Quagsire can survive, and after that she has a Lapras that obviously will survive because it has such high base HP. I don't take a ton of damage against either of them, which is really good because Starmie can come out and hit really hard. That would have been a really rough loss since I hadn't saved in a minute. Luckily Charizard pulls through against the Water Trainer, and now it's time for the final gym of Kanto, Blue. Most of Blue's team is not going to be a problem at all. Pidgeot really doesn't pose a threat. Rhydon could maybe hit Rock Slide. That would be a problem. It doesn't seem to know that it should be doing that though, so it just takes 2 flamethrowers to go down. Gyarados is a higher level than Lance's though, and it does survive the trick that I pulled on Lance with Dragon Breath into Fly, so I am starting to get a little bit worried. It takes me out with a Hydro Pump there. In the next fight though, Rhydon set up Sandstorm, which actually does some damage to Gyarados, meaning I can actually take it out with Fly. And now that Charizard's holding the leftovers, I'm slowly healing all the damage since I can delay the battles with Fly. This means that I have more turns to recover health and is actually super beneficial for Charizard. Once I take out Arcanine with Earthquake, Exeggutor really poses no threat at all, and Blue goes down on the second attempt. And now with 12 resets, it's time for the man himself, Pokemon Trainer Red, on Mount Silver. Before I do that, I can fly back to Johto. I'm doing this because I'm going to backtrack and forget the move Fly. Now in hindsight, I think this was a mistake. Fly would have been better than Return if I was holding a Sharp Beak, but I hadn't thought that through, and being 2 turns, I figured it was just slower, but that could actually have comboed very well with leftovers. Going into this fight now, I realized a huge problem. Pikachu obviously I want to knock out as quickly as possible because it has Thunder, but the Blastoise can set up Rain Dance and knock out Charizard every time. For the next fight, I think, well, I could teach Curse and maybe set up against Pikachu. If I get set up enough, maybe Pikachu just won't do it very much. The leftovers might save me, right? Definitely not. I take a lot of losses against Red. I go and train up a level, go back and test it. Train up a couple more levels, go back and test it. The reality is the combination of Pikachu and Blastoise to start this fight is kind of Charizard's worst nightmare. A status condition like Paralysis can just end this fight in the blink of an eye. Rain Dance makes Blastoise do incredible damage. The secret is just to level up to level 75 and just hope that I can tank one Surf. Unfortunately, that's not the most interesting strategy, but it's kind of all that Charizard has in this fight. In previous fights, even if I got lucky to survive that, the Espeon would often take me out. And you can see that I am really scared here, but at level 75 I have enough HP to tank one hit from Espeon, barely. I can get to Snorlax, which means I can rest up. I don't have any other option to take here because Snorlax would knock me out on the next turn for sure. However, unlike Gen 1, Rest is much less reliable. It takes more turns to wake up, which means I can take more hits from Snorlax. I could get paralyzed by Body Slam, which would be unfortunate, but as I set up with Curse, I'm going to take less damage from him. I have to rest and set up and just try to survive as long as possible. If I get paralyzed, I can heal it with Rest and luckily get my speed back as well. And then once I'm fully set up, Return will be able to polish off the rest of his team because I'll have such crazy high attack. In fact, at level 75, Charizard has 846 attack, meaning that Return does incredible damage against Snorlax. It can take out Charizard in a single hit. And against Venusaur, it's actually still better to hit Return than Flamethrower. It takes an easy one hit there, and that means I finally defeated Pokemon Trainer Red. That's a real time of 2 hours, 19 minutes, and 6 seconds with a game time of 7 hours and 56 minutes. The 2 fights against Lance and Red really set Charizard back here, but I've learned a lot from this run, and I intend to also do Blastoise as well coming up soon, so I can continue learning and then start some real timed solo runs to start making a tier list for Generation 2. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Make sure to like the video if you have and subscribe for more weekly Pokemon content. I will have live streams on Saturday and on Monday nights for the foreseeable future, and a video for Aerodactyl and Pokemon Yellow coming out next week. Thank you again and have a wonderful day.